The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 2, Dragon and Soldier. Chapter 18. The mud hut Lieutenant Cueball led them to was larger than most of the ones around it, with wide, fan-shaped leaves stuck into its sides at various spots. The doorway was low, and all of them except Rogan had to duck to keep from hitting their heads. Experimentally, Jack brushed his hand against the outer wall as he went through the doorway. It might look like fresh mud, but it was as hard and unyielding as stone. A single room took up the entire interior of the hut. There were three aliens seated behind a table in the center, short, pale, hairless beings with round but hollow faces and bright silvery eyes. Agri, Jack decided, though he'd never actually seen any of these particular species up close before. Two of them were wearing the same camouflage military clothing as the Shamshir mercenaries, while the third was dressed in a long white robe with narrow red stripes. The robe, in Jack's opinion, definitely suited them better. The ones playing soldier looked ridiculous.
They tell me what, then tell me what it is this time,
the robe agrist said. His voice was a lot more melodious than Jack would have guessed from the almost skull-like face.
Yet another crushing defeat against the thieves, another step toward total victory against our oppressors.
Jack frowned, taking another look. Even given that he didn't know the first thing about reading agrist faces, the robed guy did not seem very happy. In fact, from the tone of the comments, he seemed downright angry. Not exactly the attitude he would have expected. Unlike Jack, Lieutenant Cueball didn't seem surprised by the tone.
I don't blame you for being skeptical, Your Honor. Your Honorist,
he said, his voice calm and earnest.
But this time we have the key. These are children,
one of the uniformed Agri said harshly.
Human children. Did you think we would not know? Even children can fight, Defense Master,
Lieutenant Cueball pointed out.
In the hands of capable soldiers like those of the Wynyard's Edge, they can be molded into mighty warriors indeed.
Out of the corner of his eye, Jack saw Allison stir, probably thinking about their 10 whole days of training, he decided, and wanting very much to say something sarcastic. But she remained silent.
But that's not why these particular prisoners are important,
Lieutenant Cueball went on.
These six are far more valuable than mere warriors. They've been trained in Wynyard Edge communications and computer access codes. And we've also taken their computers intact. Soon we'll be able to break both their real-time tactical data and also learn their long-term plans. And this will gain us what?
The robed agrist asked. Lieutenant Cueball seemed taken aback.
Why, victory, of course, Your Honorist. Will it?
His honorist asked.
Will it really?
He turned his silvery eyes on Jack.
Will it force the Wynyard's Edge to abandon their attacks on our mine? Will it persuade the Parapins to accept the ruling of the courts that our mine is indeed ours? Will it finally persuade the Trade Association to send a Judge Paladin to confirm and enforce that ruling?
Jack felt a funny tingling in the pit of his stomach. Lieutenant Bash had told them that it was the Agri who had jumped the Parapins' mining claims, but according to this agrist, it was the other way around, which was none of his business, of course. He had no particular interest in local politics or what exactly was going on with a small-time mine that probably no one else in the whole Orion Arm cared about. The only reason he was here was to try to collect information on Jin 90s so that he could find out who had attacked Dracos' ship so that eventually he could get Dracos off his back. Unfortunately, Dracos wasn't likely to see things quite that simply. Dracos and his Kadar warrior ethic were going to be very unhappy if it turned out that they were fighting on the wrong side of this war. Sure enough, he could feel the dragon moving softly along his skin. That was a sign that usually meant he was uncomfortable or annoyed. Jack could only hope he would keep his annoyance to himself long enough for them to get out of this mess.
The only reason the Parapins are still pushing this is because the Edge is backing them,
Lieutenant Cueball said.
And the only reason they're still on Sunrise is that they don't think we can beat them. You have told us this afternoon's attack on Merseb would persuade them to leave,
his honorist said.
I said it would be the first step,
Lieutenant Cueball corrected.
All we need now is to bloody them in a half-dozen places at once.
He slapped his fingertips at the edge patch on Jami's shoulder.
This is our key.
I do not like this,
His Honoress said flatly.
They are children. It is not right to make war against children.
But it's all right for those same children to make war against us?
Lieutenant Cuball demanded, starting to sound impatient.
Come on, think. Who's those heads of yours for a change?
What do you require of us?
The defense master asked. Lieutenant Cuball gave a sound that was almost a sniff.
Nothing at all, he said. We'll get what we need by ourselves. I just thought you'd like to be brought up to speed on what was happening, that's all.
He jerked his head toward the door. The Shamshir soldiers nudged the prisoners, and the whole group turned and went outside again.
Idiots,
one of the soldiers muttered.
Of course they're idiots,
Lieutenant Cuball said as he led the way back toward the human-style buildings by the landing area.
All aliens are. Ignore them and concentrate on the job.
What happens if we don't feel like cooperating? Allison asked. Jack winced. It was not a smart thing to say, and he was pretty sure everyone else in the group knew it. Lieutenant Cuball certainly did.
That sounded like a challenge, puppy, he said quietly. I like challenges. Don't worry, one of you will talk. Maybe you, huh?
Lieutenant,
a melodious voice called. Jack turned to see the second of the uniformed Agri hurrying up behind them.
The defense master's compliments. He wishes the human children to be placed in custody under Agris Protector authority.
Return the defense master's compliments fourfold,
Lieutenant Cuball said courteously,
and inform him that the prisoners will be delivered to his custody when I'm finished with them.
The defense master specifically said,
You will deliver my compliments and my message,
Lieutenant Cuball said, turning his back on the alien.
This way, puppies.
He took them into the larger of the two buildings, into a back room that seemed to have been specifically designed to be a jail cell. There were no windows, the door was equipped with two separate locks, and there were a dozen metal rings embedded halfway into the concrete floor. At Lieutenant Cuball's instructions, the soldiers produced handcuffs. Ordering the prisoners to sit, they secured their wrists to the rings.
Right,
he said briskly when they were finished.
Someone want to save all of us a lot of time and effort and give me the access codes right now?
Jack didn't dare look around at the others. He kept his eyes on Lieutenant Cuball, and after a moment the man gave a smirk.
Didn't think so, he said. Fine, we'll do it the hard way.
He looked around the room, and his gaze fell on Jack.
You, bright eyes, let's go.
One of the soldiers unfastened the ring end of Jack's handcuffs, leaving the other end attached to his wrist. Hauling him to his feet, he marched him out of the room. With Lieutenant Cuball again in the lead, they took him back outside and into the outer building. The whole procedure seemed to be taking a lot of unnecessary time, Jack thought, especially for people who claimed to be in so much of a hurry. But he'd been through this same routine a few times with various police departments across the Orion Arm. It was all for show, dropping vague threats and then giving the victim time to think and sweat about it. And the fact that they'd taken Jack out of the room first meant that he wasn't the primary target of the evening's entertainment. Lieutenant Cuball hadn't given him nearly enough time to think and sweat, after all. No, they were probably targeting little Rogan, he decided uncomfortably, either him or one of the girls. This second building seemed to be set up more along the lines of the Edge's HQ back on Carrion, with normal offices and hallways and everything. The soldiers took Jack to what looked like a conference room, where he found Tango 5 Zulu's full-top computers laid out neatly around a large oval table. They were plugged in, turned on, and ready to go. All they were waiting for was the proper access code.
Okay,
Lieutenant Cuball said, gesturing to the computers.
Like I said, we can do this easy or we can do it hard. You've got one last chance to be smart.
Oh, I'm already smart, Jack assured him, watching his face closely. Problem is, I'm also poor. Lieutenant Cuball's eyes narrowed.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means I want to know what's in it for me, Jack said. One of the other Shamshirs snorted loudly.
You get to stay in one piece, he said.
That's important, all right, Jack agreed, shivering. He needed to play this out so that he knew how much wiggle room he had here. But at the same time, he definitely didn't want to push these men too far. But it sounds like you guys are in a hurry. I work faster when I'm inspired. One of the soldiers took a step forward.
You want inspiration?
He bit out, drawing a long knife from a sheath at his side.
Let me give you some inspiration.
Lieutenant Q-Ball twitched his hand. Reluctantly, Jack thought, the man stepped back.
Okay, I'll play, the lieutenant said. What do you want?
My aunt and uncle indentured me to the Wynyard's Edge, Jack said. 50,000 for 2 years of slave labor.
And what, you want us to buy your contract?
Hardly, Jack said. I want cash and a door out of here. A cynical smile tugged at the corners of Lieutenant Q-Ball's mouth.
I see the Edge is still squeezing a quart of loyalty out of each fresh recruit, he said. Fine. Cash on the drum for value received. What can you give us?
Depends on how much you can pay, Jack countered. How does 100,000 sound?
Like you think we're stupid, Lieutenant Q-Ball said darkly, or desperate.
I don't know about the first, Jack said thoughtfully, rubbing at his chin. The loose end of his handcuffs bounced against his chest as he did so. But on the second, it seems to me that you're pushing up against a deadline here. The defense master could send his people around at any time to collect us, you know. I don't think the Agri would like it if they found out you were planning to torture a bunch of human children. Lieutenant Q-Ball smiled again, a very nasty smile this time.
You think anyone in this room cares a dead frog what the Agri like or don't like?
Jack frowned. This wasn't the response he had been expecting. This is their world, he pointed out cautiously. They hired you, not the other way around.
I guess maybe you're hard of hearing,
Lieutenant Q-Ball said. He wasn't smiling anymore.
I'll say it again. I don't care what the Agri like or want and don't like or don't want. The mine they're sitting on is worth a lot of money. Get the picture?
Jack looked over at the soldier standing by the door, feeling the ground sifting like dry sand out from under his position. So you're not here to defend the Agri at all, he said slowly. All you want is the mine.
Catches on quick, don't he?
One of the Shamshirs said sarcastically. And the only thing that stands in your way, Jack added, is the Wynyard's Edge.
Who want the mine just as badly as we do?
Lieutenant Q-Ball agreed. He must have seen something in Jack's face because he smiled again.
Ah, come now. You weren't thinking noble thoughts about them, were you? Did you really think they were here to help the Parapins take over the mine, collect their fee, and move on? Who do you think they are, Dragonbacks?
Jack nodded, suddenly feeling very tired. Once, he thought he and Dracos were on the right side, helping the Wynyard's Edge defend a Parapin mine from aggressors. A few minutes ago, he'd begun to wonder if it was actually the Agri who were the innocent victims here. Now he realized that there was no right side for him to be on. Both armies were out for themselves, fighting solely for a share of the loot. The people who really owned the mine, whichever group it actually was, weren't going to keep their property no matter who won. Ever since he'd started this scam, Dracos had been talking about how soldiers were the protectors of the weak. He wondered what the noble Kada poet warrior would have to say about this. He didn't have to guess what Uncle Verge would say. I told you so. Pretty well covered that one. Yes, he said, I understand. He took a deep breath. Dracos had stopped his frustrated movements, he noticed. Perhaps the dragon was offended beyond any reaction at all. Or else he was preparing for action.
Good,
Lieutenant Q-Ball said.
Don't look so shocked. This is how the universe operates. Get used to it.
He folded his arms across his chest.
Here's the offer. 25,000 in cash and a ticket off this mudball for everything in those computers. If you can deliver it in 1 hour.
Jack sighed. Maybe Uncle Verge was right after all. Maybe looking out for yourself was all you could expect to do in this life. Trying to do anything else was inviting a whole water buffalo stampede to charge right down on top of you. And at the moment, looking out for himself meant getting out of here. Dracos would understand. In fact, Dracos was probably tugging at the leash to get away from this soggy mess himself. Anyway, the whole only reason they'd come here in the first place was to track down those Gin 90s. 25,000 in Shamshir cash would give them a whole new way to continue that search. That ought to calm the dragon's conscience, he hoped. Deal, he said, stepping to the nearest computer and sitting down on the chair in front of it. Briefly, he wondered if Dracos would consider this a betrayal of his soldier's oath. But there was nothing he could do except hope the dragon understood. Taking a deep breath, he keyed in the main access code they'd been taught. Nothing happened.